The silence in the house was thick, heavier than the humid summer air. It was the kind of silence that screamed unspoken words, a silence I'd become intimately familiar with these past few months. I stared at the ceiling fan. Its rhythmic were a counterpoint to the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. Sarah, my wife of 15 years, was in the shower, the water cascading, a temporary distraction to the unease that had taken root in our lives. It hadn't always been like this. We had been the couple people envied, the one with the effortless connection, the easy laughter, the comfortable silences. We had built a life together, brick by brick, with shared dreams and unspoken understandings. Or so I thought. Then came the whispers, the late nights at work, the hushed phone calls in the other room, the subtle shift in her demeanor. It was like watching a flower slowly wilt, its vibrant colors fading into a dull, lifeless hue. I'd found the texts, of course, the explicit ones, the ones that made my blood run cold and my heart feel like a shattered vase. I had read them over and over, each word a fresh stab wound. My mind struggled to reconcile the woman I loved with the woman in those messages. The pain was a living thing, gnawing at my insides, threatening to consume me whole. But somewhere beneath the agony, a strange sense of calm had begun to grow. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. It was something more akin to acceptance. Acceptance that the life I had known was irrevocably altered, and I had a choice to make. I could wallow in self-pity, let the bitterness consume me, or I could take control. I decided I would choose the latter. I didn't confront her initially, not outwardly. I became a ghost in our house, observing, learning, formulating a plan. The anger I had felt was still there, but it was tempered by a calculated coldness, a strategic precision I didn't know I possessed. I started by creating a digital trail, leaving a breadcrumb of fabricated online dating profiles. Nothing explicit, just suggestive enough with casual banter and flirtatious emojis. The sort of thing she was doing with someone else, just with me playing the part of the cheater. It was a cruel game. I knew that, but my heart had been so thoroughly fractured that all the pain just seemed to be pushing me towards this darker path. I changed my password on the phone. A simple act that didn't go unnoticed. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She noticed. I saw the flicker of concern, then the feigned indifference. The way she pretended to be occupied with her phone but still kept her eyes on me. It was pathetic, her attempts to make me think I was a fool. She was a fool if she thought I was blind. The day I knew the plan was complete was the day she asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. I didn't react. I just nodded slowly, almost reluctantly, which in return made her overly enthusiastic in her response. It was clear she was trying to compensate for her own guilt. We chose a restaurant, one of our usual date night spots. It felt bizarre to be there, our laughter and happiness replaced by a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. I watched her eat. I watched her pretend that everything was okay. She touched my hand, a meaningless gesture, a habit she was following without real feeling. "You seem distant," she said, her voice a carefully practiced melody of concern. I just shrugged. Just tired. After dinner, as we drove home, I pulled into a gas station. "I need to grab a drink," I said. "Want anything?" She shook her head. While I was inside, I discreetly sent a text message from my phone. It was to a number that wasn't in her contacts, a number she wouldn't recognize. I crafted the text carefully. Asterisk tonight at 10. Your place. Asterisk and hit send. I felt a strange sense of calm, a quiet satisfaction, as if a piece of the puzzle had finally fallen into place. Back in the car, the air was thick with that unspoken tension. I reached over and placed my hand over hers, just like she had done at dinner. She looked at me, her eyes questioning, and I smiled. A shallow, meaningless smile that didn't reach my eyes. As we got home, the silence returned and amplified. I made my way to the living room while she went to the bedroom. I waited. I knew what was coming. I held my breath. It wasn't long before I heard her frantic steps as she rushed into the living room. She was holding my phone, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and horror. You couldn't," she stammered, her voice trembling. What is this?" she managed. pointing at the text message on my phone. I looked at her, not with anger, not with sadness, but with a detached curiosity, like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. "What does it look like?" I asked, my voice low and steady. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin a ghastly white. She began to tremble. But you." "Yes, me," I said. "I've been experimenting with online dating. It's quite exhilarating. You should try it sometime." I wanted to say more. I wanted to unleash the torrent of pain, anger, and betrayal that had been boiling inside me. But I held back. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. She looked like a cornered animal, her eyes darting from my face to the phone in her hand. I don't understand," she whispered. "I think you do," I said. I stood up and walked over to her, taking the phone gently from her hand. My touch was devoid of feeling. "It's not that complicated. You cheated. I played along. I turned your game back on you." She tried to protest, to stammer out some weak denial, but the words died in her throat. The tears began to fall, silent at first, then with increasing ferocity. I watched her cry, the woman I had loved, the woman who had betrayed me. It was a pathetic sight, but I didn't feel pity. I felt something else, something cold and sharp, like a shard of glass. You're doing this to me?" she finally managed to gasp. "No, Sarah," I said. "You did this to yourself." I turned and walked to the bedroom, leaving her sobbing in the living room. I packed a bag methodically, carefully, as if packing for a business trip. I didn't look back. I didn't offer a word of comfort. There was nothing left to say. I was done. I walked out the door, leaving behind the life I had known, the life we had built. I left behind the house, the memories, the wreckage of our marriage. I left behind the woman who had shattered my heart and thought she would get away with it. I stepped outside into the night, the cool air a welcome balm on my skin. In the months that followed, I learned how to live again, how to breathe again, how to be myself again. I moved to a new city, found a new job, and started over. It wasn't easy, but with each step, I felt a sense of liberation, of freedom. I was no longer defined by her actions, by her betrayal. I was free to write my own story, to choose my own path. I never saw her again. I never heard from her again. But every now and then, when the silence descended, I'd remember the look on her face, that moment of realization as she looked at my phone, that look of sheer terror and disbelief. And a small, almost imperceptible smile would grace my lips. It wasn't the smile of someone who was happy, but of someone who had finally found peace.